and welcome to another edition of In the Spotlight with Mayor Jeffrey Mims. And today, again, all my guests are special, so I have another special guest, Chief Kamran Afzal. How you doing?
I'm good, Mayor. Thanks for the invite.
Good.
I've seen your podcast a few times, so I'd love to be part of it.
Okay, thanks so much. This is always great for the community to see some of the kind of things that are happening from around the city, from individuals who probably are not seen and heard of as much, and the aspect of understanding or getting a better understanding of what individuals in positions like yours do as far as creating a better life for the city of Dayton's citizens, if you will. Of course, I'm always talking about making Dayton the best place for someone to live, work, play, be educated, raise a family, and grow old.
Absolutely.
Maybe in that order, maybe not, but close to it. All right. So what brings you to the city of Dayton, Ohio?
A lot of different things. So obviously I was already working as a chief in Virginia. So I grew up in Virginia. Initially immigrant from Pakistan, came here in 1982 when I was 15 years of age, and then went to college here, and then became a police officer in the D.C. area. Moved around as a chief, and when I saw a job opening, what attracted me to Dayton was it was very racially very diverse, ethnically very diverse, seemed very open, especially it's kind of important to me being of a ethnic background, minority group myself. And what was really attractive to me was some of the plans that the city had put in place to overcome years and years of issues that Dayton has had. So that was very attractive to me because where I grew up and retired from around the county, they had been working on how to diversify their economy for years. And my generation and there was a beneficiary of that, where we saw crime drop drastically during my time. And it wasn't necessarily that we got any better, but because the median income rose drastically during my time there, and you saw a lot of development, and you continue to see a lot of development. So as a former president once said, it's the economy, stupid, and I think it is the economy that helps us get out of some of the chaos that does creep into municipalities.
Mm-hmm. Before we came on, we were talking about the aspect of the median income, and I'm really happy to be a part of an organization, the city, if you will, that has been able to help raise the median income over the last 10, 12 years from $28,000 to now to be approximately $47,000. Yeah. So that's almost a $20,000 income.
Yeah, in a very short amount of time. That's outstanding work.
Yeah, so we have the business community, the schools, all those individuals who have their fingers in the pot to create opportunities to have more and more businesses, for example, that decide that they want to make Dayton home. They want to make Dayton home because they see some of the progress that we're making as far as the city is concerned. And to look at where we've been over the last 4 or 5 decades in terms of having some of the negative factors that have just been horrendous, if you will. Redlining, the aspect of desegregation, busing, the fact that we have these unconstitutional systems of funding education, things that are core to how you improve the quality of life as far as our citizens are concerned. And then looking at Ohio being a place where it has made tremendous growth and improvement just in terms of job growth. Because just in 2006, 2009 timeframe, we led the nation in terms of job loss, Ohio. We were also 49th in African-American male graduation rates. And to look at the fact that we're also 49th in job creation during that time frame, to see where we are right now, leading the region in terms of job growth is very, very important. And it shows a big signal, if you will, for those who businesses, corporations, and even citizens who are thinking about trying to find some place to live. Dayton's hot right now, and Dayton's hot, and more industry is moving to the city, and more things are happening with more and more investments are coming to the city as well. So as you mentioned, the aspect of when we look at data that you mentioned, those communities that are always challenged with the most opportunity for crime, if you will, are those cities where there's been the most disinvestment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in my experience, and I'm not an expert in anything particular. I just look at my own experiences where I grew up in the D.C. area and Arlington, Virginia, economically very well off. Yeah. So you see Also, that you don't see, you see crime. Crime is always going to
Right.
be there, but you just don't see this frequency. So the work that I think the city is doing, which was very, very attractive to me, is the fact that there was some thought put into understanding that a way out is always going to be economic viability, opportunities for people from all walks of life to be able to achieve the American dream. So I think it's definitely on the right track. I think we have a lot more work to do, which I know we're doing right now. So I think that also shows towards the issues that we deal with from a crime perspective. You definitely, I think that would help reduce the frequency of some of the issues that we have in some neighborhoods, not throughout the city, but particular neighborhoods are definitely more affected. And you can see the economic conditions of the same neighborhood. You will see, definitely on the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum.
Okay. So when you came, we were near the end of our police reform process here in the city of Dayton.
Yes.
Talk about your experience in terms of working with that. I know we had some conversations a lot dealing with the whole aspect of use of force.
Right.
And one of the big things that we put in place early in the process was body cameras. And that helps us a lot in terms of being able to validate, here's what actually happened,
Right.
as opposed to what you think happened.
No, so my experience was definitely, I came near the end of that. I was really on the implementation phase of the police reform, so all the work had been done. I saw the 143 recommendations. I mean, there was nothing that I read when I was applying for it that kind of said, no, this is not the place to be. And kind of experienced it myself. So use of force is one of the things where we saw the policy being enacted, and going through some growing pains, understanding, making sure that people understood how much use is actually used. And we kind of showed some data that the narrative that the use is force, like this whole bunch of time, is just not correct. I think the calls that we document, right? There's a lot of calls that just are not documented because, you might be talking to a citizen, detectives going out there, but actual calls for service that are documented, about 140,000 calls. Our use of force was 99.8% of the time we didn't use force. Mm-hmm. And then in 0.2% of the time we used force, but most of it was usually maybe taser, so non-lethal force. Lethal force was just not something that's used that often by police department. It is used, but it's not as to the level that maybe people believed. You referenced body cameras. I had experience with body cameras before I got here, and I can tell you that the perspective, it provides affirmation for the kind of work that is done by police officers, because the camera might not have the full perspective that the officer sees, but the camera doesn't lie. The audio doesn't lie. So a lot of times, that my experience, even coming here before I came here, was that the perspective might be one, and the body camera will never really show that, and that's okay. I mean, because we all see things differently. I understand that when you're dealing with police, it is stressful. I mean, I've been a police officer for almost 34 years. And every time I see a police car, my foot gets off the gas. Yeah. And usually I'm not speeding, but it's just a natural reaction. So I can understand that when people do deal with a police officer, it is an intimidating factor, right? Because we look a certain way, we have all this gear on us. So I can see the perspective being different. But body camera helps, I think, both the citizen and the police officer, because the perspective is the perspective, and what you see on camera is usually a little bit different than what you thought you heard. Yeah. So I think it's really helpful. And hopefully it eases some of the tension that does exist with law enforcement and the community that they serve. And I think another thing I think is to be, from my perspective, it is also always, for me, my work is always about serving somebody else. It really isn't about policing somebody. And I know that's one of the things I really stress to officers in Dayton, officers that were under my command and other places, that really are not here to police anybody. We're here to serve people. We just do it through a profession that's called policing or law enforcement. Right.
You were talking about speeding and the aspect of, taking that foot off the gas pedal. I had this policeman tell me one time, my other life, I used to have sports cars. I had this red sports car sitting in my driveway. And he said every time he'd come past my house, he was tempted to come in the house and give me a ticket. He said, because the car looked like it was speeding, even though it was sitting still. But the aspect of how you have those kind of relationships also with the citizens that you interact with eases some of the pressures that both the citizen and the police officer may feel if they're going into a situation.
Absolutely. And today, the meeting that you were at today earlier, Mayor, that I know I was there also, which was one of the reforms that was recommended, that our police officers interact and get a lesson from the community, overseen by our HRC, that brings a different perspective. So the officers who are about to serve kind of hear from from folks from different walks of life, whether it's any kind of ethnic minority community, the business community, so they understand what somebody else perceives of us. So when you go up there, our job is to uphold the constitutional privileges of everybody that we come across, but you also got to do it empathetically and sympathetically. So that I think is one of the biggest factor that I think is very, very beneficial for our officers or about to be officers to kind of hear from folks that, and usually in academies we don't really hear from. So I thought it's a very, very a vital part of that reform that was included as part of now our training, a basic curriculum in law enforcement.
Yep. I think the issue that we put in place, one of those recommendations was know your rights.
Yes.
In terms of having members of the community, as well as a police officer, maybe a psychologist or something, just sit in those spaces and just talk about knowing your rights. What do you do if you're stopped by a police person? What do you do if they're telling you to do something that you probably are not sure you should do? What are your options in terms of those spaces? I think that's been very helpful for us in terms of having those, especially for more and more of the younger citizens that we have as far as the city of Dayton is concerned. The aspect of them understanding that just because you're stopped, someone's asking you questions, it doesn't mean that you have to be either belligerent or disrespectful in terms of those situations, and just understanding just where you are in terms of your rights.
Right, and I think part of that also, the lesson plan also, is that if you're not satisfied with the services that you get because maybe you believe that the officer was not respectful, like we're expecting our citizens to be respectful, that there are so many different options to be able to go file that report. And if you then don't agree with our investigation, you can go to HRC, and you have from a citizen appeals board, you have another option to have your voice heard. So I think all of those systems that we put in place from the reform perspective, hopefully gives our citizens a lot of confidence in believing that the officers who serve in Dayton are righteous individuals, professional individuals, and if you don't believe they are, you have the ability to then bring those to our attention so we can correct that and have your voice heard.
Yeah, very true. Another one of the recommendations we sort of passed on to our training component, if you will, was the aspect of how to de-escalate the situation.
Right.
And I know too often in some of the other departments that we looked at across the nation, where there were not policemen who were looking at first to de-escalate, and their responsiveness dealing with citizens and vice versa was like, okay, now we're in a conflictual situation, and neither party seems like they want to back down. And so the aspect of us getting input from the community about how we find ways of having these kind of conversations that says, okay, let's take a chill pill for a minute. Let's take a chill pill, and then let's talk about what happened. Let's talk about what we hope to be the outcome,
right,
on a positive basis.
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the things that the department did before I came in. It was called ICAC training, which talks about creating time and distance to be able to give you more
Right.
time to be able to react to things and not misconstrue some information, the actions that you might see. So that's part of. I mean, it's a separate policy in our a lot of policies that we have, that the de-escalation is that important for us. And it's the right thing to do, is because we're not here to police anyone. We're here to serve people, understanding that people view things differently. So there's a lot of focus that we put on our officers now at the academy level. So they go through their training. I actually just did a video on the importance of the ICAC training that we have incorporated in our department from, I believe, 2021. So right as the police reforms were occurring, that policy was being, that modeling of how to deal with situations was already in place. And then after the police reform, the de-escalation policy was finalized and put in place. And I've been here for 3.5 years, so it's been in place for a little while. Right. since I've been here.
Yeah. I recall being, of course, a former teacher and a former coach and working with young people, primarily from middle school, I think probably about 3.5 years, but 7 years at the high school level. And teaching more and more of our young people in terms of how to identify, how to resolve conflict at its lowest level. Also with my track team, also with my soccer team, it was a blessing, probably more so than I realized, having one fight in 10 years, even as I did lunchroom supervision. But the aspect of helping young people understand, and I would tell some of them, especially some of the guys who initially want to bulk up, if you will, and cool down. Okay, I want you to understand something. Now, I'm still crazy about you. I love you to death. Right. Now, you did some messed up stuff. Okay, but I'm still crazy about you as a human being. Right. Now, what we got to figure out is how to get you not to do that crazy stuff again.
Right.
Okay, and move from that perspective. There's a whole different attitude that they bring to you after you have a conversation like that. Right. So it's not the end of the day. We're not going to go into a space where you can't come back to school anymore. You get put out of class, you get put off the track team, the soccer team, or whatever the case might be. But we have to understand there's a better way for us to do some of the kinds of things that you did. There's a better way to understanding how you can get something else accomplished in a better way other than what you just currently displayed. And that opens up the space. And then it also gives some of the other classmates or teammates, whatever the case may be, opportunity to partake or join the conversation and to seek some joint resolution, if you will, as opposed to just between this one person or two people that you may be talking with. Right. Yep.
And I think some of the work that I know you're leading in the Peace Initiative, because there's a lot of that stuff. This is all learned behavior, right? Especially the some of the negative things that we do see in my profession that we see. I mean, obviously we've done things on the PD side, but I know in the talk, part of the bigger conversation of the Peace Initiative that you're leading, there's a lot of talk about how to parlay that information down to our younger generation, older generation, the community at large. About you don't want to find permanent solutions to a temporary problem. Right, where if you have a disagreement, you don't want to be picking a gun and shoot somebody, because that doesn't really solve anything. That destroys not just the individual that was harmed, but both families.
Yep.
So
and
friends. And that is a long-term thing. I know you and I have talked about it, and I've mentioned quite a few in public meetings that the recovery takes a long time. The things that lead to chaos takes a long time also, but recovery takes a long time. And prime example for me for recovery is the work that the city has done in downtown, because I live downtown, and people have told me that 15 years ago that was not a condition that you would have. And I think Dayton Dragons were here like 25 years ago. Slowly it's taken that time, and now it looks like it's those things are kind of spreading outward. I was talking to the gentleman from the Westwood Civic Group. He's talking about, and I forget, I can see his name, I can see his face, forget his name. He's talking about how to, doing some things to rehabbing some of the properties that are in Westwood community to be able to kind of change the complexion of that neighborhood. Right. That it just takes time. So I think we're on the right track. It's tough to say you'll be patient, but I think it takes a long time to kind of get back on your feet, especially if you want to have any meaningful change, which I think we're trying to do is meaningful change, to make sure that 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, we are in a much different place than we are today. Right. And we are a different place, from my understanding, is today than we were like 10 years ago in downtown.
Yeah, most definitely. I think the issue, too, as you mentioned that, oftentimes we talk about people being patient. I've been in Dayton all my life, except for the time that I was in the military. So the aspect of seeing what maybe I thought was good at a certain point in time, what's been bad or what's been good in terms of getting better, if you will, when you look at different types of things. And being in both Dayton and Jefferson Township school systems growing up, but never lost my connectivity, of course, with the city of Dayton. In fact, some of my earlier years, I was sharing with someone, as we talked about baseball, for example, Little League Baseball, the aspect of that and swimming, living in Jefferson Township and riding my bike with friends down to back to Dayton, approximately 3 or 4 days a week. Just because I was involved in a church program, a junior usher board when I was involved in St. Luke Church, Little League Baseball, over at Hudson Field and was Jackson School, as well as Mallory Park for swimming. So never lost that type of connection, if you will, in terms of seeing what was happening in Dayton and having friends in both places. And then to see some of the good things, the bad things, the things that were really, really bad, and then seeing transition in terms of the rebirth, if you will, in terms of more and more jobs. Being in Dayton when the Frigidaire, General Motors plants closed and left, seeing NCR leave and doing things from that perspective and having people finding other jobs and other things in order to make their contributions as far as society is concerned by being able to take care of themselves and take care of their family. And seeing, again, more and more of the businesses moving to Dayton to allow us to generate more income, as we talked about raising the minimum income as well. So safety is always an issue. It's always one of those issues when people want to have downtown, they want to see downtown cleaner, they want to see downtown safer. And as we were able to produce and deliver on those two wishes, if you will, that's when more and more of the investments began to come and continue as far as Dayton is concerned.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very special for us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We understand the safety aspect of it, and I will tell you, just looking at data, people might think that there are a lot of high critical event frequency events occurring. They do occur, but they're very limited to particular neighborhoods, and we try to work with those neighborhoods to try to so it's not like all of Dayton is having these issues. It's always a particular place on a map that occurs, and some of the stuff that I know the city has been trying to do from economically, I think as those things get implemented, you will see improvement in those neighborhoods. But at the end of the day, my street is my neighborhood. So from a personal accountability perspective, I tell everybody else, pick up the phone and call us, because when you make it known that certain behavior will not be acceptable in your neighborhood, the individual who do harm kind of get that and they kind of move away.
Yeah.
That's been my experience. Even in Dayton, there are definitely certain neighborhoods in the city of Dayton that will not hesitate to call me, call you, call the city manager, because whatever the behavior they see, they say it's not acceptable, and you will see that their crime statistics are much lower than neighborhoods where you might not get the call. And I know there's a role that we have to play about creating the trust and that part is never ending, and it has to be continuous, and it will continue to be continuous, and that's the work that we're trying to do as to what the city of Dayton PD looks like, not just today, but also 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, to make sure that we understand that we are here to serve our community in different ways. Hopefully it's at the birthday parties and barbecues, but if it's somebody does harm, then we're there also to make sure that those people are made whole as much as possible.
Yeah. I know we're probably about 10 minutes left, I think, and there are some key things I want to make sure we talk about before we're off. And so if I go too far on with a question, just kick me under the table. So the aspect, one of the things that I mentioned in some of the settings I was dealing with, as a teacher in a special program or supervisor in a special program where I picked teachers who work with young people who were in a situation where they were like maybe at least 2-3 years behind in middle school. And to take those young people who had been unsuccessful in their basic tests in their educational career, the 7th grade, and then moving them in the summer program to a point where they would be ready for school in 8th grade. And one of the things that we did with even with some of the kids who were doing some crazy things, if you will, instead of suspending young people from school for a week, 2 weeks, 3-4 days, to have them come to school, but they had to sit in a special place for lunch, not interact with the rest of their peers, and then have to stay after school for 3 hours each one of the days that would normally be suspended. Did this, of course, with the parents' permission. And while they got dinner while they were there, they also got conflict resolution training in terms of working with the police department. They also had to do remedial work, schoolwork, so they would not fall behind as far as classrooms concerned. And then again, of course, they had to work with the custodian. to help clean up around the inside and outside the school building. And we had a lot of parents and teachers and principals who really liked the aspect of what was happening from that perspective. And the aspect of also looking at how those things change the attitudes of the young people involved in those spaces as well.
Yeah, talking about socializing someone into what the model behavior that you want. So obviously, as you know, that you just came through today with, you saw 2 of our police academies, one that's about to graduate, one that's, it's 30 weeks of actual on-the-job training. So that is exactly what you're describing as to how do we want our officers to behave. So what you're describing from at a school level or at a family life is exactly that. We don't just say, well, you're hired, let's just go on the street. With 30 weeks of police training academy, 1,200 some hours, then 20 weeks of on-the-job training with an officer that actually is experienced, so they can go through a process, because nobody just does things on their own. If you leave somebody on their own, they will just go through what somebody else is doing, and if it's bad behavior, they're going to go bad behavior. So you have to teach good behavior. So that what you're describing from a conflict resolution perspective is exactly where most I would believe that successful, well-to-do communities do, is they have these structures in place. They're way beyond the police's abilities, but we use the same modeling. We tell everybody, this is the model that's going to be okay. And then we give them a 600-page manual, procedure manual, saying, this is the rules. Right? You're going to follow this rule. If you don't follow those rules, you're going to be held accountable for that. And when that does occur, we do that. So the some of the behavior that you've talked about, the conflict resolution training, if you don't, it's what you learn at home, and then what you learn in school, and what you learn among your friends. So that all of that has to kind of match, right? So the government has a role. I mean, the role that I know the Peace Initiative is trying to play. Schools have a role. We have a role as well. As I've told people, that we have a lane that we need to stay in. We will do what we need to do. We engage with a lot of our youth. We actually have 10,000 contacts with youths, positive contacts, not in any fashion that's negative, meaning somebody committed a crime. Positive manner, just to reinforce the positive role modeling behavior type. So we use the same model that you're talking about. We just do it in the police academy, field training, and then in Ohio mandates that we do training on a yearly basis. So we do the same thing, constantly reinforcing what is good behavior mean to be a police officer. So it's no different what you're trying to do in the community.
Yep. Okay. And lastly, real quickly, we're going to be releasing the RFP for the whole aspect of the Peace Initiative, the Peace Campaign. We have that completed. It's going to be going out here momentarily. Okay. And then lastly, I want to say something about a real-time crime center.
Yeah.
And so I'll let you hit that in about a minute. Okay. Okay, do that?
Sure, absolutely. Okay. So the real-time crime center is about using technology to pinpoint when a crime does occur, try to pinpoint information that can lead to us stopping the right individual. Right. Without that technology, let's just say you have a crime that occurs in a certain area, and you have a lookout is for a black vehicle. As an officer, you get there. If you get 10 black vehicles, as just part of what we need to do, we will stop all 10 vehicles. And obviously, it's only one car that's the one that's responsible. What real-time crime center is trying to do is using all the stuff that you've already authorized, license plate reader, camera technology, body-worn cameras, to be able to say, yeah, something occurred, who was in that area, and see if we can identify one particular vehicle or individual, so we can just stop that individual. Some of the successes we've had, we had a shooting a few months ago, where we could clearly see on the camera who did the shooting. We had the descriptors, so we didn't stop 10 different people. We went after one guy. We were able to locate him and the gun. So the real-time crime center is giving information, having officers, or in the future maybe not professional staff members, who are watching the cameras that have already been authorized, and public-facing cameras, nothing in private, and give officers who have so much information coming when you're in your car that it's really hard to discern what's actual intelligence versus just information. To be able to give that information out, saying, hey, the car is ABC 123, that's the tag number on the car, stop that vehicle, not somebody else that might look like it. So it is the concept of fishing with a spear instead of throwing a net out and stopping a whole bunch of different people. And hopefully that also increases confidence that we are not here to target any community members, target any ethnic group or any age group. It is who does harm and try to figure out
Whoever
and
it
bring up
is.
who it is that person is. So that's the thing. And on the violence interrupters, that program has been successful everywhere it's been. Whereas people who are from the community that might have experience in dealing with in those arena and maybe have put their life straight now can go and talk to individuals to make them understand that what they're doing is harmful to the very community and provide them services so they can get out of that network and cycle they might be stuck in. That's so much more effective than hearing from a police officer like me, because I'm not going to have the credibility that somebody from the streets might have with their own, with the streets itself. So I think it all in a very, very positive manner. I might have taken more than a minute to explain that there.
So I'm going to wrap it up right now. So again, thank you. And thank you for taking the time to watch In the Spotlight with Mayor Jeffrey Mims. And you can catch us, of course, right now by watching TV. If you're watching this, you're also watching TV. You can share this also at www.daytonohio.gov, or you can also catch us on YouTube. Thank you again, and have a great day.